Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, one of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. Back with episode number 294. We're going to be talking about the Xbox Showcase, as well as some of our comments on Ubisoft Forward. Here with me tonight, I have my two young gentlemen. With me, as always, Mr. DBQ Hams. How you doing, DBQ?
Oh, thanks for calling us young. That just makes me feel better. Oh, my cholesterol check, that helps me. There we go. Okay, hold on. Let me drink a drink of my Metamucil. Okay. Yes, it is. It does sometimes, like, coming through the non-E3 week, it does make you feel like an old gamer as you've been around this cycle for multiple decades and you kind of know the ins and outs, but it's nice to still be surprised, and it's nice to be here to talk about it with you gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Towmaster99, how you doing, Tow?
I'm doing well, thank you. And DB is definitely the younger of the three, I believe.
Well, we're all equals on this show. Without much further ado, let's get to it. Starting off with segment one, despite the fact that we have quite a lot of material to run down tonight in the showcase notes, we're going to go ahead and still talk about what this pastime is really all about, which is playing games. I did not have a chance to scramble the order, so I'm going to do that live now. And we're actually going to start talking with Diablo IV. So all of us have played a little bit of it to date. I am actually playing on console, which would not...
Well, hold on. I think I remember, maybe on this podcast, but at least in this Discord, you making a statement about Diablo being, when you think of Diablo, you're playing on PC. So what changed?
What changed is I'm probably going to be playing Diablo for a very long time. I bought Diablo 2 Resurrected. I've gone back to that game many times over the years. I have Diablo 3 on both Nintendo Switch as well as PC, and I've gone back to both versions of that game numerous times. So while I intend to have kind of the definitive experience on PC, I'm not necessarily in a rush to buy it on PC, knowing that I'm eventually gonna get it. And man, I may be wrong in my prediction, but I feel like Blizzard always has a sale on Battle.net. So, I feel like at some point they're going to bundle it with some seasonal content or something like that. And so, it'll all come out in the wash. But I did start playing it on PC, specifically on PlayStation 5. The game, quick notes about performance, the game gives you one option, and that's to run at 4K 60. So we're going to talk a little bit about Starfield, when we get to that part of the show, and a lot of the arguments that have gone on around today regarding performance. And where I land on things predominantly with these Generation 9 consoles is I just want a choice. I'm less wrapped around the axle about whether or not they have like the ultra fastest modes, that are available, but I prefer the games that give me a choice. I play at 1440p a lot, and I would, if there's any wiggle room to get more performance out of something by running at 1440p, I would prefer to have that option, because to me 4K has never really made that much of a difference. I had 4K monitors in here for PCs, and I stripped them all out and replaced them, for a short time with 25-inch, monitors that ran at 240 and 360 hertz, when I was really big into first-person shooters and competitively and live streaming. And now I run typically on larger monitors, but at 1440p. So, there's that. I'll talk about some more stuff about the story and some of the gameplay mechanics, but I kind of wanted to get the performance stuff out of the way first. Tao, where have you been playing, and kind of what has been your experience so far?
Yeah, I've been playing on PC, and to go back to the console side for a second, though, I will say I had to switch over to the controller because much like in I think it was Lost Ark when I was playing that, or when I play it, I can't use the mouse and move and try to like use the mouse buttons at the same time. It just doesn't work for me. I can't do that. It's much easier just using the controller, and I don't have to like either click around like if I'm using a mouse and keyboard, or having to hold down the mouse button so I can move around. It just doesn't seem natural to me. It kind of seems off. So controller is much better playing Destiny, geez, Diablo or any kind of Diablo-like game. So I had to switch over to my I play with an Xbox One controller. So I've been doing that, and it was a much better experience once I switched over. So, but I mean, graphically, I mean, it looks fine, it looks gorgeous. I mean, it's on PC, so um, and just gameplay. I mean, it's Diablo. It's not much as far as like looting and stuff like that and fighting. There's not much difference there. Now, obviously, you're in this big like open world live service type of game, so I'll see people running around and stuff, and we'll take down some beast when there's an event in an area. So that's kind of cool. Kind of like kind of reminds me of Destiny back in the day, where you just jump on with a group of people, do your thing, and then you all just kind of spread apart. So it's kind of
so
cool
you've been
that way.
you've been playing with that social permissive turned on then,
Yes.
because you can't turn it off. Because I turn it off on PlayStation 5. I don't want people in my games when I'm playing them the first time through in campaign mode. Like
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they could jump into your like. See, I don't know how.
They
as
can't
far
jump in
as,
your
like,
game. But it's like
sorry.
you said, it's like Destiny 2, right? It's like they're running around
Yeah.
in the background. Or like in Forza with like drivatars. Right? Well, not quite like Forza. In Forza, they're drivatars and they're not real people, right? But
Right.
but it's other people on the server. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering though if that would interfere with like actual missions and quests or not. Like I just see the people like when I'm running around, so I mean like
Well,
it's fine. Like I'm trying to get from point A to point B, I see a group of people, but as far as like missions, I don't think I've ever seen anybody like when I'm actually doing like I'm in a cave or a castle or something. So it's
yeah,
not too bad.
but you're interoperating with them, I guess, when you join in on these events, right? Because I haven't
Right.
done any of that. Okay.
Yeah,
Correct.
right.
Yeah.
I think the mission pieces are instance then, and then when you're in the open world, when you find those events, that's where people end up interacting with you. Like I've had plenty of people just kind of run through me at different times until we get around the area of like when there's an event, and then everybody kind of is actively hitting and killing.
Yeah, so I'm already a necromancer, so I already have a lot of stuff running around
Oh
on the
yeah,
screen. I don't
you're
particularly
good.
need like additional people.
I was,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just gonna say I'm just gonna say Necromancer's super overpowered. By the way.
So I'm a weird I'm a necromancer who does not run around with my summon armed all the time. I will
Oh, well,
typically
even without
disarm.
that, yeah. I mean, some of the abilities you can get are like wow, like they're pretty powerful.
So all three of us are running a necromancer then? Are you Tao? Are you a necromancer as well?
I got two. My first character I started was a druid, or is a druid, I should say.
Okay.
I got the druid, and then I have a necromancer. So, and
Nice.
then they're around the same, like 14, 15-ish level right now, both of them.
So what? So did you start two characters because you've been playing co-op with someone?
No, I just I played necromancer back on Diablo 3, and when I was playing the druid, I was like, ah man, this is like it's kind of a slog going through with the druid right now because I'm not a high level, so I don't have like the big armaments and stuff that magic and I can use. So I was like, well, I want to go through and just kind of be able be able to do stuff a little bit more easier because I have it on I think it's veteran right now as my level, or the I forgot what they
World
call
tier
it.
2 then?
Yeah, the world tier. Yeah. So a little harder when I don't have those summons. It just takes a lot longer, to kill people, and I'm like constantly spamming the health button because and that's kind of nice too that they do drop a good amount of health, at least for right now, on this level. But then also I was thinking, well, if I have when I do co-op with somebody else, I can I have another character I can just jump into a lower level. But somehow I've got them both around the same level right now, so I might even do a third if I do start another co-op run with somebody else.
So that is an interesting game mechanic this time, right? So Diablo 3, there's basically no need for you to ever hit the health button. And I don't think it launched that way, but I think it was a thing that they eventually patched in. But this time, you at least, I think, I can't remember. I don't know why I'm thinking. Maybe it's on. So on I think it's another game, but there's a button press that you actually hit to have to hit the health potion, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's a bumper.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least on
Yeah.
controller. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's the RB or something like that.
Yeah, it's LB for Xbox. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So DBQ, how about you? Have your initial experiences been?
Playing on Xbox, I'm on a 1080p with my Xbox Series X or X, so it's running just fine. It's not, great graphics because it's 1080p. But yeah, running a Necromancer about level 14, and I felt like I was really OP until I got into a certain dungeon and got to a boss that didn't spawn any enemies. And so then it ate through my skeletons, and like I was slowly chipping my way through the dungeon on tier 2 and got to the boss and got wiped. And so I turned it down to tier 1, got back a whole lot faster, but then still got wiped by the boss because there wasn't anybody to, resurrect. So that really changed it there. But in terms of I'm finding my gameplay very similar to early Destiny in terms of I am not in any rush to go through the story. Like if I see a public event, more or less, right? Like I'll hang out there, and by the time I finish that and go kill some other things, a new one is popped, and I'll go do that. Like there's some enjoyment in that kind of community kind of destruction. So
Yeah, and I'm assuming with those public events, like you each get rewards. I'm assuming, like at Levon, I got to pick up something, and I'm not picking it up, snatching it from somebody or anything like that, right? Correct.
no, because then all the enemies, anytime you hit an enemy, it's scaling to your ability. So it's not like you're coming into somebody else's world where it's, you're getting some super higher gear or lower gear that if you're opening that chest, you're getting things that are relevant to you.
Yeah, and
So-
then I just want one more thing. Sorry, just with the dual characters that I have right now, I'm actually the first character that I have now. I'm kind of doing like all the side quests when I find them, like with the people you can talk to in the towns and stuff. And then with the Necromancer, I'm pretty much just chugging through the storyline, like head through. I'm not doing any side quests. That was another reason I wanted to have another character like that too. Also.
So how have you guys been finding the loot drops so far?
I've gotten probably like a handful of rares, I think, already. Well, whatever the gold or
Legendary is a gold.
legendary.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything higher than that. I haven't really.
Yeah,
looked
there
into it.
used. I mean, there usually is. There's like the yellow gold, and then there's another whole hue there. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, it feels like the drops are not as prevalent, not as prevalent as they were in Diablo 3 early on. But they feel, they're not stingy enough that discourages you from, like, they're a nice pace of that dopamine drip.
So you hit it on an interesting point, and so because the next question I was going to ask was about the inventory management meta, and but something you mentioned just triggered as a convergence point. So because I was going to ask you DBQ because you're playing on Xbox, how have you found the inventory management meta? And I think one of the reasons why we're seeing the 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 loot drop decrease in frequency is because if you actually managed inventory on a console, it would be a complete pain in the butt. But you don't have to do a lot of that because anytime you go into the inventory and cursor over right a piece of a gear, it immediately so game designs in the past frequently used to have where kind of like in Borderlands, I think when you hovered over a piece of gear, the in your backpack or whatever, the piece of gear you had armed would come up in a panel next to it, and you would see a comparison. Well, now Diablo 4, and there's one other game that I've been playing that does something similar. I can't remember what it is right now, but now anytime you go over the thing, the stats are already there, and what you know is that stat comparator is against whatever you have equipped. So now when I open up my inventory because I just picked up a piece of new gear, I hit the R stick right on PlayStation 5, it automatically sorts it. The brand new piece of gear that I've picked up has a little halo ring around it, which has not been the case, right? In Diablo games, you would typically open up your inventory and you would just have to like, it would typically show up in a particular part of your inventory or something, but you would eventually figure it out, but it wasn't kind of done for you. But now it's kind of, it has a halo ring around it, so you can immediately go to it, and when it pops up its stats, you see stats either in the red or the green, and you know, and you get another halo ring over the equipment slot right around your little character silhouette that it would take up, and so you hover over it, you know where it goes, and you see the stat indicator, the delta stat indicators that tell you whether it's a better piece or a worse piece of equipment. So the inventory management meta has been, a lot of times I would say consolified, and I would kind of mean diluted and dumbed down. However, in this case, I actually think it's been made a little more elegant, and more efficient, and arguably in a way that maybe it should have been before. But I don't know. How have you found it, DBQ?
No, I think it is compared to Diablo 3, I mean, it's much more streamlined in terms of just being able to have that number. At first, wasn't used to that number, right? Like after spending enough time with the other Diablos and other ARGs, like, you're used to wanting that comparison and even not trusting that comparison. Like, and I still do that a little bit. Like, yes, stat wise, it is directly better or worse, but then I also find myself looking at, especially as you get up into the legendaries, what are the perks, right? Like, what is that? Like, it may be a +10, but it actually doesn't have the life steal or something else, right? So there's still that kind of, min-maxing kind of evaluation that happens in any type of loot based game. But yeah, I find it a whole lot. I mean, it's definitely feels developed and streamlined for consoles. It is, compared to the menus within Diablo 3, even Diablo 2 remaster, right? Like, it is, the text is nice and it is big, it's easy to read, it is clear. It's not that kind of squinting at it like you had to do in Diablo 3. So yeah, they've definitely designed around people playing on TVs for sure.
Well, we could go on talking about Diablo 4 probably all night, and we're probably going to be playing this game for the next several years, probably until the next console generation. So Tao, I wanted to ask you, you hit up a thing that is a classic on PC and has not been consolified yet, although this game will eventually go to the Xbox Series X and S, and so I'll be curious to see how it lands. You might be able to speak to that, because I think you've also played Age of Empires 2 on Xbox. Is that correct? Nope.
No, yeah, I never
Okay.
played Age of Empires 2. Yeah,
Okay.
another 4 here. Age of Empires 4. Yeah, I've also been playing, or went back to, I should say, because I had started it when it first came out, and I just kind of had that RTS itch. So I think I mentioned it a week or two ago. So I did jump back into Age of Empires 4, going just through the storyline right now, kind of going through that. The initial the thing with the RTS was I didn't really like going through the storyline, because it was just kind of like it gave you a snapshot of what you can do. But in this case, because I was coming back to it, it was kind of nice because I was able to kind of get back in the flow of things and how everything worked. And there's a lot of management stuff that you have to deal with, with the crops and food and resources and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, well, let me just jump into the storyline. So I actually kind of enjoyed it this time around, because it helped me, reacquaint everything. Not that it's like super hard, because that's, I played RTSs before too, but you need that little refresher. So I was able to do that. And actually, the first few missions I had done when I first got the game was actually pretty easy. Like, I was able to like just trump through everything. This time, I actually had a couple levels or quests I had to go through and do it at least a couple times, maybe even 3 times on some of them. So it gave me a challenge. So that was actually kind of nice. And I was looking at like kind of the skirmishes, but I was like, I'd basically have to do it online for the most part. I think there was one that's like just a 1v1 that you can do against the AI. And I was like, I like when there's like multiple people, trying to do stuff. So I kind of skipped that for now, but I definitely want to go back and play some of the skirmishes. Maybe even to go online. I'm sure I'll get wrecked, but that's fine. That, let's help me get better, I suppose. This is how they say, just play until, you're comfortable with it. But yeah, I've been enjoying it. Like I said, I love an RTS. So thoroughly enjoying Age of Empires right now.
All right, very cool. The other thing I've been playing is Street Fighter 6. Man, on console, again, hitting performance first, the game runs amazingly. The game runs at 4K 120, which I think is super impressive for a fighting game. I think the thing that I am most disappointed in, just after my first few hours of gameplay, is, I mean, I bought the game because it had a story mode. And what I thought I had in my mind, and this is my fault, so I'm not putting this on the game, what I had in my mind was that I was getting, because I was living off the whole hype of Summer Game Fest and seeing Mortal Kombat 1, and I was like, all right, this is going to be something like, you know, the Mortal Kombat storyline, and it's not. It is a lot more like Yakuza. And what were you saying, DBQ? You're muted right now.
I'm glad I'm muted because I've been laughing. So, right, like I, as someone who played the demo, you know, that gave you that taste of what that world tour mode is, and it is very kind of tongue in cheek, kind of, you know, ham fisted. It's very Capcom-y in terms of its cheese. Yeah, so it's not your Mortal Kombat like story mode. It is more like Yakuza as you're running around towns and going between different spaces. That said, are you enjoying the fighting even if the story hasn't hooked you?
Well, the problem is there's not that much of it. I mean, like real. I mean, at least I haven't gotten to a part where, like the fighting the gang members as you're like, as you walk into like the bad parts of town. Like, I don't find that particularly engaging.
You're not just fighting like the random woman on her cell phone on her lunch
Well,
break.
well, you do, but that's also kind of weird to me. That's interesting in that sometimes you will challenge somebody to a fight, and when you challenge somebody to a fight, you have no idea what style they're going to come at you with. And so the first few fights at like the level 1, everybody was just kind of the same. But once you get to like level 3, 4, and 5, like people, like you challenge people, and like the first time around, I was like, all right, this is going to be like another like thug henchman dope, like no difference. And dude hit some style. I was like, whoa, like hold on a second. So there's that. I mean, one thing that's cool about it is if you do have nostalgia for Street Fighter, which I don't, but if you do, you're gonna go around and meet like a bunch of the old characters and like learn their styles. So that's a neat kind of way to kind of experience that nostalgia. Like a lot of people who've been playing Street Fighter have been playing like for, you know, 10, 20 years, right? And so that's cool, you know, and to sometimes get acquainted with those characters too, because from a, you know, the lore that's around Street Fighter is also a lot of kind of off game stuff, which is another topic we're going to talk about tonight. You know, where like you don't really know who Ken and Ryu are and like all these characters and stuff unless you like went and like read a bunch of stuff or watched some of like the weird anime, you know, cartoons that came on, which all, you know, not everybody had access to depending on what your cable network was like. So that's kind of neat. Like I've gone over into the other part of town and met like Chun-Li, and kind of just seeing her style and actually learning it, right? Because it is a more, I don't want to say robust, but it is a more like intimate like look into like their individual fighting styles. It's kind of like a vignette. It kind of isolates them and lets you focus on them and their fighting style. That's a little different than like if you were just sitting back off the console watching somebody like play in the arcade, you know. So that's, you know, kind of neat. The Yakuza like effect from it. Yakuza's a game series that I like, but I never wind up sticking with that long, because it always eventually kind of bogs down to me. So just kind of being rooted in that is a great. Now, I've also, at the end of that session, I also went over to the classic arcade mode and did the tutorials for the arcade controls, which was good because Street Fighter was never one of those games that I ever glommed onto, right? And part of the thing was, and so when I have played it, I never like learned like the move set or understood, you know, what the heck was the thing about it. I was always, you know, a bigger Tekken guy and then a Soul Calibur person and, you know, Dead or Alive and Mortal Kombat, right? So those fighting systems are different. So actually getting time to really sit down and kind of learn like the insides and outs. Not that it's super complicated. And if I would have taken 10, 15 minutes before my life to do it, but I didn't. So that's kind of neat. And there's a very good chance when I go back, I don't know that I'm going to bother with the world tour mode, or whether that will be something that I just nibble at, and I may just, more so concentrate on the arcade mode and then see where I go from there.
Are you playing modern style or in the arcade? I mean, in the world tour, but then you went to classic style of combat in the arcade?
So here's one of my problems, and I don't know if it's me. Great Scott, man! In the world tour mode, I want to say there's like 15 levels of porpoising into any singular menu. So your move style is replicated in like 3 or 4 different settings, and so I have gone in and I keep trying to change it to classic, but one of the things is you keep so even if you get it assigned to classic, then you keep learning new master styles, so your buttons keep changing as you equip them. So like a lot of times I'm like, am I doing the classic style? So I don't know if I've got it figured out but I am trying to get it over to classic, because I just feel like acclimating myself in the modern style. If I do decide to do anything that's PvP like, I'm going to be at a disadvantage, learning that newer style.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think the story mode, the world tour mode definitely kind of pushes you into that modern style of the one button combo and super moves and things like that. And in some ways, like I talked about during the demo, because you're moving from style to style, that modern control setup is more functional there, because as you said, you're not always jumping in between which combo does what and how I've equipped. Where if you're playing in the arcade mode, you're sticking with one character and kind of learning that piece. So it does feel so. Yeah, I'll be curious to see. I mean, as someone who has more nostalgia and muscle memory for Street Fighter than Mortal Kombat, it's it's interesting to see the direction that they're going, even if it's like, yeah. I as much as I enjoyed the demo, I'm also going to be glad to wait for a sale and pick it up at some point in time.
Gotcha. So, gentlemen, any more comments on our primary gaming experience before we get over to the news? Okay, so for the news, we are going to start with the Xbox Showcase, which was held yesterday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So, and I don't know exactly how this whole segment is going to unfold. I had different ideas in my head. I don't know if that's the exact way we're going to do it, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Here, up on the screen is what Xbox opened with, which was the Fable trailer. So, general feelings from you guys on this choice to open with the Fable trailer.
I think the fact that because it's been announced since 2020 and there hasn't really been anything, I think it was wise to get it out there early, because people were going to be asking about it. Like even if it, I think it is probably not, they knew that they were going to end with Starfield. And I thought it was a relatively strong tonal opening. I think I appreciated the trailer. Still not quite sure kind of what gameplay is going to look like, but tonally, I think it sets kind of a fun tone for, the show, kind of a little more lighthearted than some of the other things that kind of came after it. So I was okay with it. I don't know that we don't really have a release date, right? So tonally, it's nice to kind of start off with, but it doesn't really tell us anything more than an environmental kind of feeling of the game.
Yeah, Tao?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like there was hints maybe of what gameplay might be, in some of the, especially in the earlier part of the trailer. Excuse me. But like DB said, I mean, I think, obviously Fable is always kind of about the humor and that kind of atmosphere, and they definitely, and I believe that's the guy from IT Crowd. I can't remember his name right now. I forgot I was looking him up.
Yeah, Dave. I think it's I can't remember, but yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
yes,
can't
it's the
remember
guy
it.
from IZ.
You know, it's good to kind of get that comedic, like, hey, there is this going to be comedy in this game. It's not just going to be Fable, but totally serious and stuff like that, which I'm sure people were kind of afraid of. Obviously this is a whole new studio that's doing it, and they weren't sure what was going on. Yeah, I mean they're in the UK also, but you never know what they might do with it. But I think overall it was fine, even though. There was no, I think it was an engine. I think there was a little blurb in there, maybe, or maybe I'm just because everything else kind of had an engine, or a lot of stuff, I should say. Maybe that, I was just thinking it was an engine stuff. It wasn't actual real, gameplay and stuff like that, but I think it was fine.
Yeah, and I think so. I mean, a couple things I think I'll say, and I should have opened up with this. So one thing was, my my overall takeaway from this show was, so the show is what it is what it was. The PlayStation Showcase is what it was. A lot of the commentary that I saw after this show was how this show was so overwhelmingly better than the PlayStation Showcase. And I was like, really? I mean, based on what? And, and of course, I'm a person who, through the 2000 teens, which we lived through together as gamers, you guys know I was always, I preferred the Xbox style of Showcase. Through the last generation in those years, and I was always up, and I used to say the same thing about PlayStation people. They would say, oh yeah, PlayStation 1 E3, and I'm like, really? Like, which showcase did you watch? Because the keynotes and showcase that I watched, I didn't think that was it, and I used to always comment, PlayStation seemed to not have a lot of release dates and would typically show things that were coming like in like the next year or the year after. So I went through and ran some metrics just because I wanted to kind of look at this. And I may be off, by onesie, twosie here and there. I spent a lot of time looking at data, a lot of time scrubbing these showcases, and I was quite frankly very tired when I got done. So the way I think it came down was in the Xbox showcase, they showed 26 games. And in those 26 games, we're going to talk through it. The Microsoft Flight Simulator comes up, and it has an ornithopter, like expansion thing, just like they did with like the Halo, was it the Halo Pelican, like expansion? Yep. I didn't count those as two different games.
No, it's still the same game. It's just content.
Phil Spencer comes out and he mentions that they showed 11 first-party studio games. Dude, I have been over this list till like my eyes were shaking, and like I keep coming up with 10. So I'm not sure where he got 11 from. When he comes out and he says 11 games were shown by his first-party studios, and he then runs through a list, which is remarkably also a list of 11 games. And I'm like, okay, I'm assuming that your comment and that list you just ran through were synonymous, but two of the games he counted in there were Towerborn from Stoic, the studio behind the Banner Saga, as well as Microsoft Flight Simulator by Asobo. Neither of those studios are first-party. They're not owned by Microsoft. Those games are published by Microsoft, but they're not owned, at least as far as we know. So I was talking to somebody today, and I was like, it wouldn't surprise me that they're maybe keeping their heads down, while they're going through this thing with the FTC about the merger, and so maybe they did buy those studios. Buying Asobo makes a ton of sense if they're going to be their flight simulator, studio from now on. So at any rate, he said 11. I could only count 10. Of the 26 games that were announced, 5 have no release date whatsoever. That's 19% of the content. 8 had release dates that only identified it by year. So that was 31% of the games shown. 9 games out of the 26 had firm release dates, but 2 of those were DLC packs. So the percentage I calculated out of the total shown, I calculated 27%. And that's because I discount the 2 games that had firm release dates that were DLC. I'm like, if you can't accurately predict when your DLC is coming out, then I'm not giving you points for that. Just my own personal evaluation. And then out of the total games that were shown, 6 of them were expansion packs. Expansion packs or DLC of some type. So 23% of what they showed were add-ons to live service games. You can do with that with what you will. In the PlayStation Showcase, they showed 34 games. 5 of them were first-party studio games, so significantly less than half of what Microsoft showed. 11 of them had no release date, so a third of their games had no release date.
So compared to...
Yeah, go ahead.
compared to 19%. So okay, I'm
Yes.
running comparisons on your numbers. So
Yeah.
go for it. You keep going.
Okay. 11. So I said 11. 11 had release dates of only a year, so a third of the content again.
Which is pretty similar to what Xbox was then.
Okay. What I didn't count is I didn't count which ones were 2023 and which ones were 2024. You would think and hope that the 2023 dates were a little more firm and had a little more confidence around them. 8 of them had firm release dates, so 24% of their content, which I think was pretty similar to the Xbox number.
Xbox was 27, so yeah, still in that window.
Only 2 of them were expansion packs or DLC, and so that was the Destiny 2 expansion and what was the other one? Oh, and Resident Evil 4 VR is technically an expansion to the full Resident Evil 4 game. 6 of them were VR titles, and so for Xbox fans or multi-platform fans who are watching this, who are trying to figure out, who did better, obviously those people wouldn't necessarily care about VR. I don't personally care about PSVR 2 titles, but I'm not going to take those away from PlayStation. One of those was a collection, and one of those was a remaster. Again, you can consider whether or not you would discount those, but at the end of the day, my takeaway from this were their numbers were relatively similar. There were nits, like it rubs me the wrong way when these showcases have a bunch of games with no release date. And so there was more of that from the PlayStation showcase, so that may have caused a certain vibe. But by and large, they were very similar, and I didn't feel like there was some huge, like, wackadoodle bow wave of Delta in the Xbox showcase. But that was just me. Feelings from either one of you guys?
I didn't watch the PlayStation one, so I can't really comment too much on that side. But I as far as Xbox at least, yeah, I mean they did have a lot of stuff that was not only no dates, but obviously 2024. It's like, well, that was a lot, especially in the kind of the front heavy part of the first half of the conference. I was like, okay, I'm like, maybe they're just loading those games up first, and then we'll start seeing stuff that's coming out this year and this year. But even then, it was kind of just sprinkled throughout the whole conference, where it was like, hey, 2024. I was like, okay, like, are we gonna see anything for this year? Like, and then the stuff that did show up for this year or 2023 or just like fall or whatever, it's like stuff I didn't really like. Atlus stuff, like I know it's huge and I know it's it's popular, but it's like I can't get into those games. I've tried, and it wasn't really something I want to get into. And this is just me personally, obviously talking. But so, I mean, the one and only game really, I mean, it was still, it's for me at least, it's still just Starfield. As far as all these games that have gone through, like, yeah, there were a couple other games, we'll talk about them as we go through, that seemed interesting. But once again, it's a future date. So it's like, okay, well, I'll just wait until, I actually see more gameplay or some kind of gameplay, as the second game here we're talking about didn't have any kind of gameplay, as far as I could tell. So yeah, that's pretty much it. DB?
I mean, I think it was a nice cross section, that it wasn't super heavy in one genre, that they kind of jumped in and out. They had some, you had your third person, you had some first person, you had your RPGs, you had your flight sims and strategy games. I think that there was, you had a few kind of artsy games with Jusant and 33, whatever that one is, 33 Immortals. So I felt like, I felt like the selection of games was just fine. I think coming off of last year's and the kind of reality of release schedules, that having a date of 2024 is hard to take too seriously after the last 2 years, in terms of it's so easy for things to get pushed. And that's not I mean, I don't say that as like a negative thing. I'd much rather have something get pushed and have it come out the way the developers want. But it also means, like, yeah, if I didn't see any real gameplay, it's hard to get too excited about something that is kind of tone setter. And I felt the same way at PlayStation. Like, I thought the cross section of stuff was interesting. I thought there was a lot of things that were not I think in PlayStation's case, there were a lot that they had more in terms of volume, but also they had a number of things that we knew about. And so I enjoyed watching the Xbox showcase because there were a few things in there that came as a surprise, or things that, we just like the start with Fable, like things we knew about in some capacity, but didn't really know anything more about. And so it felt like it felt like they were managing expectations without kind of swinging for too many fences, and being kind of realistic, but trying to put as strong a foot forward as they can, given the last year that they've had in terms of their first party production. That I think, that it doesn't necessarily wipe away kind of the struggles that they've had, but if these can come out within the frames that they've had and they turn out to be solid, then that's, there's a number of things in here that I'm interested in playing.
Yeah, I think the two trends I'll comment on before we go on to the next trailer is, Tal, you mentioned the gameplay. What I will say is, I scrubbed through, over the course of a couple hours this morning, like both showcases. Definitely far more gameplay shown in the PlayStation showcase, and one of the issues I think that were the cause of what you mentioned, about how you felt, and I think this was true about this whole showcase, is that Greenberg's comment before this show about, well, it's not going to be CGI and it's going to be this, like, at the end of the day, I mean, some of this is my own personal preference, but some of this was also this showcase. First of all, I've never really cared. Like I get it, CGI, in-game footage, blah, 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 who cares? All I care about is whether or not the game appears to me to be interesting. I have never taken, oh, well, this was actual footage, or this was, like, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, so many games show footage and then come out and they're still bad, right? Or so many, people are up on them from a trailer and a gameplay demo, and then it comes out and it's bad. Or people think that they're bad and crap all over the game, and then the game comes out and it's great. So I don't really care, right? Whether it's CGI, in-game footage, gameplay demo. But the problem I have with going into this showcase was Xbox's statement that they were going to kind of clean up their act and not show as much CGI and in-game footage, which led people to believe that you would see more gameplay. And what's problematic in all of these trailers, in particular the first-party trailers, is that it's all cut, edited, and spliced. And so there are flashes. I was like watching the Batman movie from 1989. There are flashes of gameplay, but they're all cut and interspersed with cinematics or in-engine footage, but from an orbital camera, where it's not the player, and so it's not your view, but it's some third-party camera that they're swinging around, right? And I'm like, so at the end of the day, I did not get to see a contiguous segment of just X number of minutes of gameplay in a game. But if you go watch the PlayStation showcase, that is absolutely what you saw. When you, like, for instance, you watch the Spider-Man 2 footage, like, that's the game. That's not anything cinematic. When you see them cut to, like, that's the game playing that. That's not a vertical slice, like, made up for, the demo. So I think that's one of the reasons why it came off a little.
No, I think that rings pretty true. Like, they were nice demo. I mean, they were nice trailers. And I think one of the things that made Ubisoft stand out to me today was that it felt like we were watching more gameplay.
Absolutely. So here's the second trailer. I think this was this actually the second. This was the second game shown.
Yeah, it's the second game shown. Yep.
And the one thing I'll mention too, Tal, that you brought up was, the lack of release dates, and I think what was problematic for me for both showcases for whatever, like, both showcases picked games to open up with that didn't have release dates, and I'm like, I get that's the one that maybe people are interested, but, like, it seems to me from a marketing perspective, if I'm going to open up a show, I'm going to open up a show with a game with a firm release date. So, and then with the Xbox showcase, you're 5 games into the showcase before you get a game with a firm release date. And that, to me, like, again, the longer that goes on in a showcase, as you experienced, Hal, like, now you're 15, 20 minutes into the showcase before you see a thing that you know that you're going to be playing at a certain time. So the game that's playing on the trailer here is South of Midnight. This is a game by Compulsion Studios, who are the We Happy Few studio. It's very stylistic. it feels like I mean, it gives the feel of kind of claymation, stop action. It's in that very, like I said, stylistic kind of part of the spectrum artistically. Um, a key problem with this gameplay trailer is you have no idea what this game is about, right? What this game is when it gets done. Um, and a trend that I dislike from both showcases is that more and more it seems that that game trailers are being shown, and when they're shown and you walk away from them, you have no idea what the game is. And so you wind up Googling and going to the PlayStation blog and going to Xbox Newswire and all these other places, the IGN like post showcase interviews with like you go all these other places to actually find out what the game is about. But this is a third-person action-adventure game that's based on supernatural folklore of the South. It gives me a very, was it a Hulu show? Like the Lovecraft.
That was an HBO Max. Yeah,
Okay.
Lovecraft County.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for Cullen Bunn fans, who Tao, I don't know if you read these, but Cullen Bunn did a comic book series called Harrow County, which actually I was reading some of the interviews. DB, you know what I'm talking about. I was reading some of the interviews with the creative leads after this, and they mentioned Haints. So, which again was a thing kind of referred to in the Harrow County. So it's very steeped in they went down on location. One of the creative leads is from the South and from Mississippi. So they've spent a lot of time down there, like pulling a lot of these tales and folklore and blending them into the game. There's a very big diversification approach to this where they mentioned multiple times in the course of the interview how great it was working for Microsoft because they had access to so much resources. And in the wake of Redfall, it's not the type of resources that you think about. It's not people to help with first-person shooter mechanics or frame rate. It's like HR resources. So they went to people, and talked to like the Black Studies Council, that's kind of one of the HR, clubs or groups, right? That, they actually one of the leads they pulled over is actually is not part of the studio, is from a part of the Xbox organization, but like more in like the HR end, and actually pulled them in, are a part of the like experience. And so I think they're maybe part of Sarah Bond's organization, but they pulled them over to help them like make sure they were creating the character right. And like they specifically went out and hired African American women, right, to make sure that they were on their team and on their narration team, to make sure that they were nailing the character correctly to give her the right voice. So I'm really impressed by kind of culturally and societally, like what they're doing with this title from a creative perspective, because I'm not saying that these are the titles that you have to do, but I'm saying if you're going to do them, it's I talked to one of the comic books creators I interviewed was Greg Rucka, and I cannot remember her name, but she's an artist that he works with very frequently, and they talked about like when they were on Wonder Woman, and how like you get these iconic DC characters, right? And DC has a discussion with you about how you have to care. Like you can do what you want as a creator, but they give the speech they give you. You kind of have a sacred responsibility, right, to take care of these characters. And the same thing I feel like here when you're going to do a minority story or something like that, you have to do something to bring some authenticity to it. You have to do some due diligence. You can't just do a hand wave and make some assumptions. So I don't know. Feelings and impressions of South of Midnight from either one of you guys?
No, I think tonally I was, the music, the tone really, I didn't even know all the kind of background development pieces that you talked about. That just makes me more positive about it. Again, I like what they're doing. I don't really know what it is as a game yet, right? Like, so I think, those are good things. It'll be interesting to see what that shows up as a game.
Tao, any comments?
No, like you mentioned, I had to go into Xbox Wire when you mentioned that, like to find out what it was, because they had a whole rundown of how they did everything. So that's when I knew, like, okay, this kind of looks kind of cool, magic based and all that, which I've been kind of getting into recently too. So looks like it'd be right up my alley.
Quick things that I will then sizzle through before we look at the Avowed trailer. So after South of Midnight, they showed Star Wars Outlaws from massive Ubisoft, which I think maybe we'll talk about once we get to the actual Ubisoft show. They showed an indie title from Thunder Lotus called 33 Immortals. Starbreeze's Payday 3, which is supposed to... those two games are coming out in 2024. Payday 3, which is supposed to come out September 21st. We're going to swing back and talk about that here in a second. And then Persona 3 Reload from Atlus in early 2024. Actually, there was a ton of Atlus content in this showcase. I think 3 games were showed, which just again in an atmosphere where there are a lot of acquisitions going on, kind of makes you kind of tilt your head and kind of ask some questions. But I know, Tao, you said you weren't particularly interested in some of that stuff. Those games, by the way, are a couple different styles, but they have heavy kind of tactical RPG elements to them, and so people who are looking for something kind of a little Fire Emblem-ish, those games are on Game Pass, and they're good gets because there are people who are interested in those games. But I think a lot of people don't.
And you're talking about like Persona 5 Tactica, which is much more in the Fire Emblem XCOM vein, where the original Personas are more in the kind of turn-based RPG aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it depends on the approach. A lot of turn-based and tactical RPG kind of have convergence and blending points to me.
Sure.
Persona 3 Portable kind of gives off that vibe.
I think to stick on the Atlus piece, just to jump further down the list of things, right? Like, I think even Phil Spencer talked about, like, our strong partnership with Sega is how they, leverage some of the Atlus pieces. But getting the reveal of Metaphor, Rafanzio, or however you want to say that, right? Like, whatever the Persona team is doing next, I think is a big get for Persona fans. Like, that's it was kind of just another trailer without it's got a 2024 release date, but it is something new and kind of unexpected, where it's not staying in that Persona universe. So I think that was a nice kind of surprise for that vein of gameplay.
Yep. And the only thing I was going to mention before we take a look at the Avowed trailer was Payday 3. In the lineup, part of the portfolio that was shown, one of the games with a firm release date. I don't have a ton of confidence in that release date. When you go to that game page and look at the FAQ, there's a lot of stuff it's pretty barren. And two of the key elements that kind of jump out at me is there's no mention of whether or not this game has crossplay or not. So the Payday games, so Payday 3 is going to PlayStation 5, Xbox, and PC, but they have not. I don't think they've been crossplay to date, and there's no mention that they're going to be now. And then there was one other thing.
I would guess that if they hit that date or come close to it, it's in early access, right? Like, Payday is one of those where it is ripe for an early access. Let's throw some stuff at the servers and start adding maps as they go.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I was going to mention. That like a lot of the gameplay that was shown, there were a couple of instances in the gameplay where I was like, is that all PvE? Or is there PvP? And again, there's no specific mention on that on the FAQ page, which seems to me like if you had nailed that and were certain about it, that would seem a very basic thing to kind of... Now, maybe they're leaning on the fact that Payday 1 and 2 have been PvE to date, but it seems like a weird thing that they wouldn't just kind of immediately clear up. Also, I mentioned that this game was a game that was kind of in development hell, and that I think Starbreeze bought the IP rights to or something. I don't know the whole sordid tale. It's very complicated, so just keep an eye out to see if that actually lands on time. The next thing that was shown after Persona 3 was the Avowed trailer by Obsidian, one of my favorite studios of all time. So any comments about how you guys felt? And when they separated these trailers out now in the front of the Obsidian thing for visual, for people who are watching the live stream or the recorded video, now you have the Obsidian 20-year anniversary bit that they threw in front of it. This was not in the showcase, I don't think. At least I didn't catch it. But yeah, like it was like that same day or the day after it was their 20th anniversary. So you guys, Tao, any particular feelings about Avowed?
I actually thought graphically like it kind of wasn't there yet, even though it's coming out next year. I mean, I guess they have some time, but from the actual like gameplay that they showed, it seemed a little rough to me. I'm still interested in it though. I mean, like once again, it's magic and kind of looks Skyrim-y. I'm almost thinking though, if it's more like what was the other game, the space game, they Outer Worlds.
Yeah, Outer Worlds. Yep.
Yeah, if it's more like that, where it's kind of like that wasn't really like open world. It's kind of like big areas. I think that you went through. I believe there's different places you had to visit. So I'm not sure if this is going to be that same way or if it is like just a total open world Skyrim game. So
I'd say that's a good bet because some of the commentary since this was shown is that in scope and scale, it is about the size of an Outer Worlds type of adventure.
okay.
They didn't specifically mention whether it was open world or not open world, but they said it was the campaign. The campaign was about a 15 to 18 hour, 15 to 20 hour type of experience. It was not. This was not being designed as a game for you to go in and I don't have the impression that they're gonna Skyrim this thing and sell it 99 different times with mods over the next 10 years.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's not what Obsidian does, right? They're telling you a story. They've crafted a story, and that's I Tao, what you're saying, I've seen echoed online today as well. Like, oh, these graphics don't look that great, and the response has often been, you don't come to a Obsidian game because of the graphics, you come because of the story. And I think that's if that's the case, like Outer Worlds told some interesting stories. Like, Obsidian does know how to tell a good story. And so I'm in some ways, so here's where I will break and I will say I'm more interested in Avowed because of the tighter story that it's probably going to tell than Starfield in terms of the vastness that it's trying to achieve.
Well, sir, you have definitely broken ranks.
I know, I am laying it down right here. Like, thematically, Starfield is like, I'm much more sci-fi than fantasy, but I really appreciate the stories that Obsidian tells, or that they try to tell, right? Like, Obsidian is also historically, you're going to want a few patches before you get into it. But they their scripting is solid. And so I think that in and of itself makes Avowed. And again, this is right up there with Fable. Like, it's one of those that has been announced for a while and really hasn't shown anything else. And so they did themselves a favor by getting it out there and showing something, even if it didn't look maybe as polished as its contemporaries.
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of one of the first games in the showcase that I felt showed enough gameplay that I had relative certainty that I was going to play it. Obsidian, like you mentioned, is one of those studios that, like you said, isn't necessarily known or thought right associated with like huge graphical fidelity or like amazing graphics implementation, but like you said, are some of the best storytellers ever. But like their games often resonate. They resonate with people as being better than some of the Bethesda games that they've been based on, right? So going way back, like Obsidian were the guys who they didn't do Baldur's. I don't think they did Baldur's Gate, but they did. But they did Icewind Dale, which was built on the Baldur's Gate engine, which there are lots of people who will have an argument about whether or not which of those two is actually the better game, right? So I loved Ice. I never finished Baldur's Gate, but I did play all the way through Icewind Dale and played through the expansion. So there you are. Of the games that we've talked about so far, I mean, I don't know that I'm going to play Fable. I don't know that I'm going to play South of Midnight yet. I'm definitely going to play Star Wars Outlaws again. We'll come back to that. But Avowed is probably a game that's on my list. Any other certain, I am definitely going to play of the games that we've talked about, A through G?
Oh, I'll be very curious to see what Fable actually is. 33 Immortals, I'm actually very interested in terms of kind of it's by the Spiritfarer guys. It told a good story there. And as we were just talking about playing Diablo 4 and the public events aspect of it, like 33 Immortals is a big co-op kind of ARPG to some degree, it looks like, or rogue based, but something with multiple scale of co-op. So it seems like that is definitely something I'm going to try. Again, for me, the nice thing about Game Pass is I will end up playing a lot of these. Whether or not they all stick with me is a whole different question, but I'm very curious on what comes forward.
And Tao, anything that you're definitely going to be playing, A through G?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably definitely get Fable regardless of like what it is. I mean, I'll play it. South of Midnight is another interesting one. Star Wars for sure, like you said. I'll probably check out 33 Immortals, just see what it is. I've never played any of the Paydays, so probably skip that one. And like I said, once again, I've never been in the Atlus games, the Persona games, so I'll probably skip that one. And Avowed, as much like I wasn't trying to like poo-poo on the game or anything, but that was the first thing I noticed when they were showing the trailer. I was like, oh, it was kind of rough, graphically. But...
It's okay to poo-poo on a game. I mean, we haven't made it our way through. I'm sure there's going to be some more poo-pooing, so it'll be just fine.
But yeah, so I'll probably check out Avowed also.
And I would love to play Payday 3. If I do, I'll play it on PC. But my thing is, I think, and I don't know, but I think the impression I've gotten of the Payday series is there's some pretty meticulous planning when it comes to planning your heist. And so it's not a thing that you do with randos, you do with people that you know, and I just don't have a crew of people that I know that play Payday. A couple things we'll keep going through the sizzle before we get to the Hellblade 2 trailer. Sea of Thieves has an expansion pack, The Legend of Monkey Island. I thought from a marketing perspective and pulling at the heartstrings, this was awesome. It's super hilarious to me that in the day after, what I've seen in the news feed is that the creator of The Legend of Monkey Island didn't know that this deal was going down. So that might just be a licensing thing where that was like an old employee from LucasArts or whatever who wasn't like, but I think it's a good get. Not personally interesting. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 by Asobo. I mentioned the Ornithopter expansion. The questions that swirl in my head about this is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 seems a very deliberate labeling. Is that just an umbrella term that's used for all of like the DLC content that they're going to put out in 2024? Or is this actually like a facelift and a refresh and arguably a sequel or new game?
What I've read is that it is a new game. Like they've said they will continue to support Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, but this is the next Flight Simulator.
Yeah, they showed all like the jobs you can do through the trailer, which aerial firefighting, search and rescue, all kinds of air racing, which I think they had. I think I added last year, I believe, was the air racing. That was one of the DLCs on 2020. But there's like a whole bunch of other ones, and then they started like rapid fire and going through other more things you can do. So it looks like it'd be kind of interesting. That I guess they're trying to gamify it, I suppose, because obviously it's not really a game if you think about it in general terms. So maybe that's what they're trying to go through with this.
Well, let me chart this up. It was one that I will definitely play. I'm actually thinking about. I've seen some more flight control systems that are being made for the Xbox Series X, and I think it's because this game is way more popular than a lot of people give it credit for. I'm probably definitely going to play this on PC, but I may be thinking about playing it on Xbox as well. But this maybe arguably a sad comment is my socks weren't blown off by the graphical fidelity of anything shown during this showcase, and Microsoft Flight Simulator was the most graphically impressive thing that I saw. So anyway, after this, we get the Hellblade trailer. And this thing to me was problematic. But DBQ, any comments on what you saw from the Hellblade 2 trailer?
Not really. I mean, again, I am not a big fan of the franchise, so I wasn't really paying too much attention. I think the piece, again, for me, this has been announced for multiple years. I think this was announced the same time that the Series X was announced at the Game Awards. And
2019 was the first time.
Right. Yeah. And we get tonal kind of CGI stuff without a whole lot of gameplay, and that makes me wonder where this is at in terms of development and what's happened along the way to get us to this point where they're not at a point of kind of really tightening this game up.
Tao, you are our resident Senua's Sacrifice Hellblade expert. What were your feelings after seeing this trailer?
Regardless, I'm gonna get it and play it, but and it looks like especially this part, this is gameplay, but they're not really. It's just more of like story, kind of what's going on, and you don't really even know what's going on because it's kind of dropped you into the middle of the game or wherever this is in the game. So it didn't really to be honest, it didn't really do anything to me, like get me more hyped. Like I said, I'm gonna get it anyways. But it was just kind of, I guess, kind of a nice little showcase, I guess, of kind of what they're trying to do or what they're at. It just kind of seemed like more, Senua's Sacrifice to me at this point. We haven't seen any fighting or any other kind of gameplay or anything to see if they've evolved that, because that was one of the weakest things for me, was the actual gameplay, like when you're actually fighting. It was just kind of like, rinse and repeat as far as the fighting was, to me at least. It was more about the story. We were talking about story about before with Obsidian, but this is one reason I really love this game, is because of the story, and just because of how, what the characters are going through with, the different voices and just the different things she sees and stuff like that. And, is this reality that she's actually going through? Obviously, sometimes it might not be, and maybe it is. Like, you don't really know, I guess. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, my problem with this trailer was I feel the same way you did, DBQ. And this is kind of the way I felt about The Last of Us 2 as well, which did the same thing. Game was shown for 4 years, right, before it came out. And in my opinion, right, kind of conveyed some things, right, even in those final vestiges that to me I didn't feel like that's what I played, just in terms of some of the dynamics and effects that they mentioned. So here we are 4 years in. There's lots of questions about this game landing, where it was going to wind up. It's coming out in 2024 now. And while I kind of understood that this game was always going to be more Hellblade 1, I still am kind of feeling like I don't know what this game is, right? But I mean, even if I accept that the mechanics are going to be the same, I don't know what the story is. I don't know what the character arc is. I don't know what the movement is. I don't know what the new challenge is. And maybe that's been covered somewhere else. But as I mentioned at the start of this rundown, right, that's my problem. Like, if you guys have heard me say it for years, if you want me to know something about your game, tell me about it in your showcase. Like, don't force me to go Google and look up a bunch of interviews and things like that. To me, this was problematic in terms of, I just would have expected something to have a little more oomph to it that they were going to show for this game, other than show off more of the engine tech, which I feel like has become like the focus of whenever this game is shown. And I'm just like, okay, that's not going to drive my interest, right, anywhere.
I think the other thing too is when they showed that original trailer, I think a couple of trailers, it almost seemed like it was going to be something bigger than Senua's Sacrifice. Like, they show her in the middle of like all these other villagers, or I'm assuming it's her tribe or whatever, and she's just giving this speech and whatever, and like this big thing. But then they go back, and now it's just Senua's Sacrifice. It's her in a cave with her, the voices, which is fine. Like, I like that part, but it's like I thought they were gonna evolve it a little bit more. So we'll have to see though.
So of the games that we've run through so far, again, just a quick swing back. That big slate of games after South of Midnight: Star Wars Outlaws 2024, 33 Immortals 2024, Payday September 21st, Persona Reload early 2024, Avowed 2024, Sea of Thieves has a firm release date in its expansion pack with July 20th, 2023. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is, as you would guess, 2024, and so is Hellblade 2. After this, we got a trailer for Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth, which is another Sega. So I guess a total of 4 Sega pieces of content shown. That is early 2024. Fallout 76, Atlantic City, just was listed as coming soon. Kunitsu-Gami: Path of the Goddess by Capcom had no release date. Any comments on any of those?
The Path of the Goddess looked interesting at the very least. Like, they showed the actual gameplay of that. It looked like it's a little bit more linear, maybe. Like, it didn't look like it was like an open world or anything, but just visually it looked, pretty cool. So that's probably definitely one I'll check out.
Yeah, they showed some more at the Capcom Direct or whatever, the showcase later today. Again, not a date on it. It's running in the RE engine, which has been looking really good in terms of what it's been able to do.
Well, here's a game that we did get a date for, finally, October 10th, 2023. I don't know that there's anything tactically significant about that date. It's, 10 days before Spider-Man. I forget which game, which September release it follows. But we're finally getting the new tech and the new engine coming out this fall. I don't really know that there's like anything more significant, I love Forza Motorsport. I'm looking forward to playing it. I'm thinking about, buying wheels and pedals, for specifically for Forza Motorsport. It's been a long time coming, and I'm glad, that it's finally coming out. I don't think that they showed us anything particularly new or surprising that we wouldn't know. It's got a garage for you to fit parts on and things like that. Any comments on Forza Motorsport?
I'm glad we got a date. I think that part was the kind of the big question, and I was glad to see that. So, yeah, no, I am looking forward to it. It's been a while, and it is already, looking at the top of my list for the fall because of what it is.
Okay, Tao, any comments?
Just this was probably the first game that's a definite no. Just because I don't like the car semi racing games. Like I like the Horizon series better. So unfortunately, yeah.
Well, hopefully you will now be able to get Forza Horizon games built on the new engine, since that was always the point of half the point of Turn 10's level of effort. So after this, we got Elder Scrolls, which had a firm release date of June 20th. Overwatch 2 showed their co-op content and kind of content infusion to the Overwatch 2 ecosystem, coming from Blizzard. That will be out August 10th. The note that I saw come across the screen was that you get access to this on Game Pass Ultimate. So I don't
really
know.
I didn't pay attention to that. I missed that.
Yeah. We'll go back and double check that, but that's the flash. That's the news flash that I saw come across the screen. Persona 5 Tactica announced here November 17th, and then we get the big one. But it was kind of the tease of the big one. Strange choice, but I mean, I guess maybe, not everybody was going to stick around to watch the deep dive. So it kind of made sense. So we got a Starfield trailer. And we may as well discuss anything that you guys felt that was pertinent from the deep dive. But I think my major takeaway from this and the deep dive, man, and I think a little bit of this is going to be true when we talk about Star Wars Outlaws as well. There's a little bit more of a whiff of Star Citizen now in this game. Obviously, the first time out of the gate, people were, conflating this with No Man's Sky, which I always thought was a bad take. But I couldn't necessarily say that the content that they were shown would have necessarily led them to a different conclusion. But I will say, after listening to the deep dive, I started hearing notes more and more so of Star Citizen. And in particular, the thing that jumped out to me was all this discussion of the ship configurator, where the guy talks about you go into the ship configurator and you play around with a lot of the pieces, and that actually changes the interior view of your starship, affects what your starship's capabilities are. You can actually hire crew to man your spaceship. Your spaceship, will, you'll be able to buy and trade and actually steal spaceships, and which ship is yours and its functionality over time will change. I think you start off. I think this is like a medium range fighter aircraft. I think spacecraft, but you'll get full blown tankers and mining ships and other things of that nature. So I'm not sure how extensive that's going to be, but then you can also change out modules in it. And the one key thing, especially that they said in the deep dive that made me think of Star Citizen, and it makes me think about how Bethesda games always talk about there's that big walkout moment. And the guy said, you go in the ship configurator and you play around with all that stuff. And you can do that at first, right off the bat. You don't have to take the default ship or the default ship appearance. And he said, but then when you actually go to the launch pad and then you see your ship for the first time, and if you've ever played for people who are listening, if you've ever played Star Citizen, that is a key moment. Like, you do all this stuff to prep and set up and blah, 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 blah. And then you figure out how to get to the spaceport and you walk out onto that launch pad and it does this big fanfare flourish of music and you see your ship for the first time. and you're out on the launch pad and you're looking out into space, right? You're in zero G, but with magnetic boots attached to it. Like there's this big feeling that goes along with it, and that I felt was like what they were trying to convey. So, any comments from you guys in terms of what you saw from Starfield and what your expectations were, how you felt this landed from the direct?
I only watched the trailer. I didn't go into the direct afterwards. I'm trying to go dark on this game. I've seen plenty already, and it's got me like I was on there like on day one. Like this just seems like it's going to be a big game, and even if it is a little bit less. No Man's Sky, which it kind of seems like. I mean, it hits the same points, even when you're talking about the ships. So like you can do all the kind of, you can get all those kind of ships in No Man's Sky too. So it kind of parallels still a little bit, or compares, I should say. But that even sounds even better. Like you can do all this configuration and stuff. It just I'm for me, I'm like I said, I'm pretty much sold on this game. This is gonna be my big game, probably going for for the next year or so once it comes out.
DBQ.
I'm glad it is your big game, Tao. No, right. I mean, I don't mean to sound snarky. I mean, I obviously am a little snarky at it. I think technically it looks really impressive. I will be very curious to see how it all comes together.
Yeah, and just to echo one of your comments at the beginning, like I thought it was a little bit weird where they kind of put this. I'm surprised they kind of just didn't leave it for the end and kind of lead into the direct after that. But I mean, you still got a good amount of games after this trailer.
Yeah. I think a couple other notes on this. The buzz. A lot of the buzz today has been about how, man. So after this, after having, and this is like part of this part for me is about the part that is the bad marketing of Microsoft, the bad transparency, right? After this, after having the trailer in the show and taking up 2 minutes doing the trailer in the middle of the show, as well as having almost a full hour to do an additional direct. One of the pieces of news that came out in an after interview that was held was how this game is locked at 30 frames per second on the Xbox Series X and on Xbox Series S. It is 4K 30 on the Series X, and it is 1440p 30 on the Series S. And I get and I understand that companies don't like to give bad news, right? But Xbox is in a certain kind of a situation, right, in terms of the competitive marketplace in this generation. They're in third place. They have the lowest install base. They're losing ground almost on a monthly basis, right, with regards to those numbers. And I just felt like there's a need for them to, I don't know, maybe do a little better than the next guy. So, and I completely understand that it's a creative choice. But I also feel like, but there were also 99 choices associated with that. It's not a singular like, oh, we're going to do 30. Like there's a way that you get there. And so I feel like there are choices that could have been made. I think my big thing for Generation 9 consoles, and I mentioned this earlier in the show, I just want it's a lofty expectation. They're closer to PCs now. We all have gaming PCs. I understand that if I want to sidestep this problem, I can go play on PC. But my feeling is that for Generation 9 consoles, there are enough examples of big budget AAA games that give you the choice that I want that choice, right? And it's not necessarily meaning that I'm saying the game is trash because it's 30 frames per second, or I'm not going to play the game because it's 30 frames per second. However, it's fine for me to critique it and do that as a takeaway point, right, as well. Like, I want modes and I want the choice. It would have been fine for me. I've ran through these numbers before. The entirety of the U.S. market doesn't all have 4K TVs, right? A 1080p at 120 frames would have been fine for me. 1080p at 60 would have been fine. But giving the player the ability to toggle right between those two and choose what their experience is, to me, is just preferable than locking it at 4K 30 or 1440p 30. Any feelings or comments on that from either one of you guys?
I mean, I think it's understandable that they're getting the flack they are, like, and like you said, the lack of flexibility there. It's, I can see their justification for it in terms of the scope that they're trying to create, but it also feels like it's not responsive to where, like you said, where the industry is going in terms of that flexibility.
Yeah, and I personally think it's a thing more so driven by schedule. I think it's a thing where, given the 2 delays that they had, they just had to make a choice. And obviously, it's not lost on me. I work in software development. It's not lost on me that taking that path, right, is an increased level of effort, which leads more time, right? 9 women can't get pregnant. You can't get pregnant and have a baby in 1 month. Which is a typical software engineering term that we utilize. And I get it, but it's just.
I mean, I think the historically with big Bethesda games, right? Like there are frame rate issues, and so if locking it means that they can control and limit that, then that's ultimately good for the initial user who's going to be excited to play this on day one, even if it isn't as buttery smooth as they may desire.
Yeah, and I could be proven absolutely wrong. And this may wind up being the preferential way to go. I will be able to tell you, since I'll be able to play the game with early access, since I since I plunked down for the collector's edition. So, so the Constellation Edition was announced during this as well, during the direct afterwards. $300 for both PC and I think for the Xbox Series X version. Comes with a bunch of stuff. Quite frankly, I don't even know the entirety of what's included in the kit other than the game. I got it because I love smartwatches, and it's a watch with some digital integration with the game, and so I wanted it. It just happened to go live on Amazon, and somebody tipped me off that it was like I saw people on Twitter showing their receipts that they were getting it. And I'm like, where are people getting this? It's not on Best Buy. It's not on GameStop. Where are you guys getting it? I contacted a buddy of mine who works at GameStop and asked him, dude, like set one aside for me. But then somebody told me part of my problem was I was looking for collector's edition, and it's actually the Constellation edition. In addition to this, they are putting out a controller, which is already available, as well as a variant of the headset that, our wonderful equipment model there, Mr. Towmaster, is wearing and modeling on the podcast right now. That's in a white, red, gold color scheme, like Starfield. So that is also available now. I'm going to get those, but I'm not going to order them now. And they're white. They don't need to be sitting around here getting dirty before the game actually releases. So we'll just see how it goes. My hopes that they don't slip that release date at all. Now that I've plunked out for the collector's edition. Some other games that came up here, Descent by Don't Nod, fall 2023, a climbing game. Still Wakes the Deep, which I thought would look super interesting, early 2024. You're out on an oil rig platform. Water effects looked great. Water is obviously one of the hardest graphical effects to pull off, so that gave me a certain amount of confidence that graphically the game was coming along well. That game by Secret Mode in the Chinese Room. Dungeons of Hinterberg coming from Microboard and Curve in 2024, which kind of a third-person action-adventure, but like a weird mix. Like the view like shifted around, but in gameplay. So there were some times where it looked like it was side-scrolling, and some other things. So it was actually one of the games that I was more interested in when I saw it. Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty by CD Projekt Red. That DLC coming September 26, 2023. Cities Skyline 2 by Paradox coming October 24th, 2023. Metaphor Refantasio by Atlus 2024, as DBQ mentioned. And Towerborn by Stoic coming 2024. One more trailer that I want to go through, but gentlemen, any comments or anything about any of those games that I ran down between Starfield and Clockwork Revolution?
I think I might jump into City Skylines. I haven't done a lot of Sim City or Sim type of games like that, but after playing that mobile...
On PC or on console?
PC.
Okay. All right. So the only get from this being in the showcase is that I guess it's a game going to Game Pass.
Yeah.
So for me, two of these here were probably my like I'm most interested in coming out of the Xbox show, and that's Jasant from Don't Nod, the kind of artistic climbing kind of exploration game, and Dungeons of Hindenburg, just the art style, almost kind of, a little cross between like a Sunset Overdrive and Jet Set Radio in terms of kind of stylistically. Yeah, I thought they both looked something different. So I'm curious on where those are. And again, thankful that they're Game Pass.
Yeah, also Towerborn, because it kind of reminded me of Guardian Heroes from back in the day. So that looked kind of nice.
Okay, so the show ended with Clockwork Revolution by who's the spy again? DBQ?
In Exile.
In Exile. Yeah. So the analogies that have been drawn today about how similar this game looks to BioShock, which is kind of a shoulder shrug to me. I'm like, so the game looks like one of the greatest games that we've ever had in the last 20 years. So why would I be mad or angry about that? Any comments or feelings about this game, guys?
No, yeah, that was my first impression too. Which it's not a knock on it. It looked, kind of steampunkish. Kind of looks pretty cool. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it feels like it was a nice surprise. I'm not sure that we knew what this was coming in. So
time mechanic to it. So
and I think we still don't, right?
Yes, right. The steampunky and the robots aspect. In Exile, what else? They've done Wasteland 3, right? Torment. They did the remaster of Torment. Wasteland 2, right? So I think ideally this again goes back in that same Obsidian vein of it might be a little clunky, but it's probably going to try to tell an interesting story.
So In Exile has not done a first-person shooter then. Is that right?
Not that I'm looking through. No, Haunted? Demon's Forge, I think might have been back in 2011. But no, recently they have not been. No, that was a third person. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, I personally think, good to see that this is what they're working on. I don't have any problems with the stylistic take. Look, I mean, the fact of the matter is that anything that looks steampunk is going to look like anything else that looks steampunk. It is a very distinctive gameplay style. Like, I don't know that you're going to get a huge amount of differentiation once you decide to go that way. So I think the last two comments that I'll mention about this show is we talked about the metrics beforehand. You guys have heard the impressions about how all of us felt about the games. The two tidbits I guess that I picked up on after the show is like I said there was a post-show interview. One of the things that Matt Booty said, he was kind of challenged on the problems Xbox had with their production pipeline, and he talked about how he thinks that the Xbox has turned the corner and their intention is to get out 4 games a year now. So if you go back a few years ago, there was a business development discussion, or it was kind of one of these weird things. PlayStation has had these a couple times too, where they've done a business meeting about the strategy and then released a press release about things that were discussed then. And if you go back a few years ago, I'm not absolutely positive, but I feel like the soundtrack was they wanted to get out 4 AAA first party games. But when you look at what Booty commented on as far as how they were doing this year and how they were getting to those 4 games, he mentioned Forza, he mentioned Starfield, but then he also mentioned Hi-Fi Rush, Minecraft Legends, and I think Ghostwire Tokyo. And I'm like, that's not like the impression I got of like the 4 AAA, right? I mean, so the voice track has changed to just 4 first party studio games per year, and I'm okay with that. But I think the big takeaway of that for me, and somebody actually said this to me, it's not something I came up with on my own, but it's caused me to start to think about it. It just means that the Xbox that I think of, like from the 360 generation, right, where like big AAA party games, like whether they were first or third party, were just flying in from everywhere, right? Like Chrome Hounds, Gears, Forza Horizon, Halo, right? That's not Xbox now. And you mentioned at DBQ, I personally think this slate of games actually looked more diversified than the PlayStation slate. Whereas in the past, I'd always said, well, PlayStation like does things kind of all over the place, and Xbox is the Halo, Forza, Gears. It's the aggro bro console, right? Which I'm fine with, and that's what I liked it. But I feel like that's not what they are now, right? The mission statement is kind of changing, and things are shifting around. So I just think, probably good for everyone to kind of change, like shift around in their seat and change their expectations and impressions of Xbox. Any closing statements from you guys from the things we went through in the showcase?
I'll say just two fact check quicks. So the Matt Booty statement, the Ghostwire Tokyo would not have been one of those because it was released on PlayStation 5 last year. And then as a follow-up to our Overwatch on Game Pass piece, so there is a hero starter pack that will be part of a Game Pass Ultimate perks, which will give you all the new characters from Overwatch 2.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Where I pulled this from is coming across screwed up. So we want to get over and talk about the Ubisoft press conference today. The one top level statement I'll make is I felt this was the best press conference that I've seen. We got games. We got tons of gameplay. We got nothing faked, right? I mean, it was all like gameplay. We got one of the biggest things to me is we got the creative leads for each of these games came out and told you what the game was, and then they often did voiceover over the tracks. So this whole thing of like, oh, we don't want to hear from these people and we want the games to speak for themselves. I'm like, that's great. But when I sit through 3.5, 4 hours of marketing fluff and 50% of those games I walk away from not even knowing if they're third person or first person, bring the blasted creative director out on stage and let the guy speak, right? Or the girl speak. Like, this whole thing of like people just want these silent sizzle reels, which to me was always kind of the PlayStation approach for those 2000 teens. I'm like, I need to understand what these games are for them to make any difference to me. I applaud Ubisoft for giving their guys that time. Some of them went over a little long. Not all of them are great stage presenters. That's fine. I have zero questions about what any of these games are. That headline, the Ubisoft thing, and when they come out. Any other comments, guys, before we kind of go through the list?
I think as a package, it was really solid. Like it felt like, I appreciate what you're saying. Like it felt like a E3 presentation of old, and not like a Ubisoft E3 presentation of old. Like this was not. They only leaned into the comedy every once in a while. This was, having the developers out there to talk about it felt more authentic than, I think, as we talked about at the beginning of the show. Like they showed a lot of gameplay, which was good, and the authentism was valuable after coming off of a lot of sizzle reels.
Any other comments now?
I didn't get to watch it live, so I was kind of just skipping through it after it had. I think it was just about over, but by the time I had been able to watch it. But yeah, I mean, even though there's not a ton of stuff that I'll probably pick up as a whole, but yeah, it was at least like you said, what it is. You know what these games are for the most part. Unfortunately, except for Assassin's Creed VR, which I was kind of interested in, but that was kind of just of a I guess CG in-engine kind of a thing. But yeah, that's pretty much echoing what you guys are saying.
Okay, so the show started off with my personal favorite is the dance troupe from the repping for the Just Dance game. Can't have an Ubisoft Direct without that. But the first meaty game that is in our wheelhouse, Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Seen some references online to this being Far Cry on Hell's Gate, which I'm fine with. You guys know that I love Far Cry 5. Saw lots of similar mechanics like the bow shooting, things like that. And I'm like, once you do a half dozen games using bows and arrows, I think that's probably a mechanic that you're going to nail in a game. The QA on your game is James Cameron. So I think if James says you can let this game go, then I think you're doing okay. You can fly the birds on this. You can use all the human weapons. This game looked great to me. The MVP of the show, by the way, Massive Entertainment, working on Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, working on the Star Wars game, still supporting the Division 2. It's pretty impressive. Any comments on Avatar, guys?
Technically beautiful, right? I don't know that I have any interest in the IP, but very impressive of a game and the mechanics that they showed.
Yeah, I mean it's a big open world game, so I'll probably jump into it. I'm always interested in those type of games. Same thing, like I'm not a huge Avatar fan. Like I've seen the movie, but I still haven't seen the second one. But eventually I will. But yeah, I mean, it looks like very colorful, very beautiful world, and it looks like it'll be pretty fun. They actually gave quite a lot of story up front of like what's going on, so that actually seemed kind of cool, also.
Yep, game comes out December 7th, 2023. Other game in the show was XDefiant. Has a beta coming out running the 21st to 23rd of June. Showed some live streamers' reactions. The creative director came out and talked about it, talked about all the information they had gathered, talked about how many betas they've run. It's, again, really impressive with understanding and hearing what the pedigree was behind this PvP shooter. Look great. Looks like it's something that may knock on the door of Call of Duty and kind of maybe take some of their players away. I mean, it's not going to topple it by any means, but definitely looks like it could get a little bit of that cake. And Ubisoft has tried this before, and they haven't been able to pull off anything in this space other than Rainbow Six Siege. Tao, any questions? You're our resident kind of X-Defiant expert.
Well, I don't know if I'm an expert. I just like to bring it up every quarter that I get a chance to. No, yeah, but like you said, it's very Call of Duty-esque with maybe a little bit of Overwatch sprinkled in there with the different abilities and stuff that you can use. So that actually looks pretty cool. I think they had the open beta date, but I think they said launched later in the summer, like a full launch, I believe. So that should be interesting. Was this free to play? I can't remember. Or was this? It is free to play. Okay.
Yeah, it's a free to play game. Yep, very much so.
So definitely we'll check it out.
And again, Mark Rubin was out on stage, who's got Call of Duty chops, Infinity War, previous Infinity War experience. So yeah, definitely. And he's been engaged with the community throughout this process. So
DBQ, I'll keep you on the mic for any comments on XDefiant, but also you could start us off with any comments on Prince of Persia. I'm not going to go through that in detail. It's the second time we've seen the game.
Yeah,
Super
no, this
impressive
was
to me.
Yeah, really impressive to me. I think also the presentation of the developer, again, going back to kind of trying to feel authentic in the world they're representing, I thought was great. This is a game that's kind of high on my list. I'm down for a platformer and it looks beautiful. They've done a lot in this vein before with, the Raymond team and things like that. So yeah, it looks really cool. The powers that they showed off look great in terms of some of the time powers, the traversal stuff, and the art style kind of fits into almost that Phoenix Rising game in terms of kind of that kind of a little bit of kind of cartoony humans. So yeah, it looks really good, real sound. Then Division Resurgence gets we get a closed beta coming up for mobile. If you've pre-registered already or if it's out there for pre-registration.
And then next big one to me was Skull and Bones came up with just kind of a trailer in the background. Major news on there. Closed beta coming the 25th and the 28th. I have played this game in one of the secret closed alphas that preceded. So this will be, which I think I'm allowed to say now. So this is a closed beta, but I think it is open. I don't think just Ubisoft like testers can get into it. I think you can apply to get into it. And I think if I remember the sequence correctly, this will be the 4th playtest that it's had. So obviously a lot of doubt and concern about this game, but it has been making progress. All during this time. So I think it is headed towards release. I don't know exactly when. Then there was kind of a sizzle reel, and I think the major takeaway for the sizzle reel for me was a lot of these games. This is where people sleep on Ubisoft. The fact that For Honor is still a thing and still getting seasonal content, The Crew 2 is still getting seasonal content. Riders Republic is still getting content. Brawlhalla is still a thing. You know, Ubisoft has stuff going on and is keeping them healthy and refreshed with content. So I won't go through any of those in huge detail. The Crew Motorfest was kind of the next big thing. Any major takeaways from this from either one of you guys?
I always love the idea of the crew. I've always struggled against its mechanics in terms of its physics, but the idea of it always has excited me. I remember playing some of the betas of the Crew 2 and enjoying that, even if it wasn't at kind of a technical level of the Forza series. So to see it look the way it does, yeah, I'm excited for it.
Tao, I know you don't like simulation racing games, but this is something that is a little more in the vein of Forza Horizon. You're muted, Tao.
Forgot I muted on the software. I played a little bit of the Crew like back in the day when it first came out, and it was interesting just kind of going around the world. But this looks actually pretty good, and actually, yeah, the graphics look pretty awesome, and kind of on, I would say, on par with Horizons, the last few at least. Just kind of surprised actually by this one. Like I knew the Crew was going on still, and I didn't realize they'd like come out with like a whole another new game, and and it would be this basically.
And it's huge. Despite the really bad Metacritic reviews, I'm still trying to go back and rebuild this history and understand what has gone on because I just wasn't paying attention to it and didn't track it. It is overwhelmingly well accepted well received by the Steam community. And as you guys always hear me say, the Steam community doesn't lie. Like you don't get good Steam user community reviews without sticking the landing. So whatever it is, like it's 60 something, it's in the 60 somethings on Metacritic. On Steam, it's in the 80 somethings. So I don't know if there's a major difference between the PC version and the console version, but again, the Crew 2 is a game that has a living service game. Like it's still getting content, and PC players apparently love it. So I need to pull the thread on what's going on behind this, but again, based on that fact alone, I have a huge amount of confidence in the development team. DBQ, I know you got to get out of here. I want to give you the opportunity to make your comments on Assassin's Creed Mirage and/or Star Wars Outlaws before you head out.
Well, actually, I we can talk about those too, but I think the Crew piece is what you said with kind of the sizzle reel. Like Ubisoft does a good job of continuing to support their games long term, and I think that's where the Crew has found a niche and a market there. Assassin's Creed piece, I think the fact that they leaned into the story aspect of it was a good hook for people. So that's great. I will let you guys talk about Outlaws because I'm definitely interested. I'm a massive fan as a developer, but it's also 2024, so I'll wait to see more. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that at the next E3.
Well, if we got room to breathe, you said you got a little time. Okay, so my feelings on the Crew. Again, I saw comments today about about like it looks so similar to Forza, but again, I just to wrap up, I go back to those Steam reviews, and there's got to be something behind that. This one taking place in Hawaii, so I think the last time we saw a really big racing game in that setting was Test Drive Unlimited back on the old Xbox 360, and I guess maybe it was on PlayStation 3 as well. I think it's looking good, and I think it has. The other note that came up was and I'm sorry, somebody's finger tapping or something is coming through the mic. So I think a big thing that was announced was that apparently players of the Crew 2, which this may drive me just to go quickly buy the game before Motorfest comes out, will be able to import their car collections from the Crew 2 into this game. So I don't quite understand what the delta is between number of cars in the Crew 2 and number of cars in Motorfest. That would mean once those people import their cars, what the heck is there left for them to do in the game? I hope that there's got to be something. But it's super impressive to hear, how they're approaching it. So on to Assassin's Creed, and we'll make those quick and then wrap up with Outlaws. The only thing I'll mention is this is a story I can't remember what the geographic location is, so I don't know if it's set in Persia. I know it's kind of an Arabic story with the central character's name is Basim. But yeah, I mean, again, I think Ubisoft, despite all the bad press Ubisoft has gotten about, like, same kind of harassment cases that Activision has had and things like that, it matters, issues of their process and them trying to all make these kind of template games in their governance board saying, well, it has to be this and it has to be that and the character has to be this. Like, to me, what the Ubisoft portfolio comes off like is that they do this effort to try and represent these multicultural stories, and areas of the world that I'm not familiar with because I haven't lived in all of them. I'm not deeply, intimately right from it. Like, and I think that's good. And this is another example of kind of what I always want to see from Assassin's Creed. Like, look, there's hundreds of cultures to represent in the world. Like, feel free to go back, right, to ones, and just change that up kind of every year. So, and Assassin's Creed obviously returning to the old formula, right, of kind of the approach. The VR game that Tao mentioned, I actually did like. It actually did have gameplay in it, and it was, it's some type of cross convergent story between Ezio, Colin,
Connor
Connor
from 3 from America.
Yep, and Cassandra from one of my favorites, Odyssey. So, Tao, any comments on AC Mirage before we wrap up with Outlaws?
No, like I said, it looks like it's going to be pretty good. I don't know if I'll get it like right off the bat, but definitely something I'll get down the road. I'm still working on Origins right now, so then I'll play Odyssey and probably Valhalla at some point.
So again, remember that Basim is in Origins, and so there's a connection there. That is, he's a story thread there. That's why even in the story trailer where they talk about the feather and the connection there, that is part of seeds that were sown in Origins back in 2017. So I'm gonna bounce, gentlemen, because I gotta head out. But I just want to say, on the last Assassin's Creed note, I've pre-registered for Jade because it looks, it looks good. I'm curious on what that microtransaction model looks like, but in terms of gameplay, it looks very much in the kind of Odyssey, Valhalla, Origins mindset, which is really where I've resonated with Assassin's Creed.
Very cool, man. Well, thanks a lot for joining in. We will wrap up with the discussion of Star Wars Outlaws. Have a good one, DBQ. Okay, last thing we're talking about is Star Wars Outlaws. I was happy that Star Wars Outlaws corrected the transgressions of the Xbox showcase, where they came out and they showed something cinematic and not knowing, in the moments before they flashed up on the screen that they were covering more of this in their own showcase. I was like, again, you've shown me a setting, but you showed me nothing about what the game is. I will also say it's becoming a nit. Look, if you're a Star Wars, with all of the Star Wars content that we have, all the stories being told on Disney and everything, like, can we please just normalize? Just give me a splash page that says blank number of years, BBY or ABY. That's what I need to know. Because every time one of these things comes up, I always have to Google, when does this occur in the Star Wars universe, right? And most Star Wars universe times seem to now be normalizing around before the Battle of Yavin or after the Battle of Yavin. That is what you need to tell me up front, right? Like, just don't leave me confused as I'm sitting there watching your stuff and not listening to you because I'm trying to wrap my mind around when this happens. Just tell me up front. So this story actually takes place between Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which makes it super interesting. Just in terms of the time, right? Empire is being challenged at this point. But they're also coming off of a victory in The Empire Strikes Back. So it's interesting to see how this is going to go down. Again, this being done by Massive Entertainment, and one of the things we have to give Massive, in addition to Ubisoft just leaning on the pedigree of the Far Cry series and the open world Assassin's Creed series, Massive are their guys who do the Division 2. And I saw a lot of mechanics here that were reminiscent of the Division 2, which just lends to a lot of available complexity that they can weave into the game. One of the things that I've been disappointed about playing through more of Jedi Survivor is I'm like, how do you not have a crouch in this game? Like a Jedi needs to infiltrate a place. It would seem that he would want to be able to crouch at some point. And and so we got to see that right off the bat. We got to see Kay, like, sneak up behind somebody and take them out. Got to see her on a speeder bike. I mean, just and we saw space combat. Like this punched like almost every ticket that I could imagine you would think of if you wanted a Star Wars game that was not a Jedi game. And my only nit that remains is, now I'm interested. I know it's not going to happen, but man, obviously it would be lovely if this actually had flight control system or HOTAS support, so that you could play the game with mouse and keyboard or controller when you were K, but then you could switch to joystick and throttle when you got into the ship. But given that the combat that was shown was third person over the shoulder camera view of the ship, behind the jet engines, I am sure that's not going to be the case. But in this game, and I was just very bothered again that this game graphically looked better in the trailer than Jedi Survivor does in real life. So Tao, any other comments about Star Wars Outlaw?
No. I watched a little bit of the gameplay. I didn't go through the whole thing. I kind of want to, once again, kind of went dark on this one, just because it looks pretty good. It is an open world game, but some of the instances look like it was not necessarily a quick time, but it's kind of like on rails kind of a thing, like when she's driving away on that first mission they show. It's like started out with her fighting, shooting and stuff, but then she like got on the speeder and was like, going down the road. And there's kind of like some points where she's like, it almost was like an automatic thing when she's kind of shooting the two speeders that were chasing her. And she got in front of, or she got in back of them so she can shoot them. So there's just stuff like that, which is kind of weird. I don't think I've ever seen that like in an open world game. And not that it's like bad or anything, but I just never seen that before. But yeah, I mean, it looks really good. I can't wait for it. Unfortunately, 2024, like DB said, like we all said. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in this one. And just, I wonder though, like you mentioned the space combat. I wonder if you can maybe switch to first person at some point, or what, like just flip, in between it. That'd be kind of nice, but we'll have to see. They didn't show that though.
Yeah, and I can understand why maybe they would have chosen not to at this juncture, or maybe they don't know that they can implement that. Like, so, I mean, I'm interested. It's just, I mean, it's a flight sim nerds like dream. Anytime these space game, like, it's, first of all, it's just amazing that they're actually modeling space combat. Now, that's true for both this game and Starfield. And then it's just a really lofty, dream, white whale kind of thing that they'll actually implement HOTAS support, and I could pull out my my Logitech, Extreme 3D Pro, or, my Thrustmaster T16000 flight control system, or things of that nature. But, we'll see.
Was there support for that in the last, just the Starfighter game? I forgot what it was called now.
Well, so Star Wars Squadrons absolutely supported flight control systems.
Okay.
But that was a pure space flight simulator type of game. I think the nightmare scarring that I still have is from, if you guys remember, the year Battlefront 2 came out, and we were all talking about that game, and I tried playing it on PC and tried setting it up so that like I could play with controller when I was on the ground, but then would switch to a flight control system when I was in the air. That did not work. It was a pretty horrible experience. So, but one can dream. For our last segment, I kind of already talked a little bit about my gameplay in Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I'm continuing that. The section that I'm in, which is finding the comms array on Kobo. It's been fun. The boss battle with Dagan Gera was fun. But man, I just feel like that particular level just kind of outstayed its welcome. It just kind of stretched and went on for a little too long. We will see about how the pacing is for the rest of the game. I'm still bothered by the fact that the game still apparently doesn't have any kind of 60 frame, 4K 60 frame per second mode. After all this time that it's been out. So, but there we are. That alone to me, like, I'm not a super huge fan of this Game of the Year discussion right in Great Scott in June. We're not even at 180 days. However, that type of thing, if it continues, would be something that in my mind would, the story can be whatever, but the fact that like no performance mode or no improvement in performance was ever given. Like, there are still graphics that still look bad, like fire effects and water effects still look just generically wholesale bad. in the game, and I'm like, okay, you know, $70 for this. I kind of want like something better, an improvement to be delivered, you know, in 2023. But like if that continues, I'm like, please don't talk to me about that game being game of the year. Like, however good the story is, like there will be other games that have stories just as good, that didn't say that they were going to improve on the performance and then failed to deliver on that promise. So Tao, any more comments before we get out of here?
No, I mean, we had a lot of showcases this past week and weekend, so with PC and future games and Summer Game Fest, so there's a lot of stuff that's flown out there. I just looked real quick at the Capcom showcase. I didn't see anything new. It was mostly stuff that they've shown in other showcases. So, but yeah, there's been a lot of stuff, and it's just trying to wrap my hand around everything.
Yeah, and same for me for the PC game showcase. I did kind of go through, you know, everything that was shown there, and I didn't see anything that jumped out at me that, you know, warranted me wanting to pull it into the agenda or anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks very much for anybody who happened to swing through the live stream. We appreciate you. For anybody who happens to be able to watch the archive version of this podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, we appreciate you as well. Please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just receive a notification whenever we post new content. We will be back next week on our regular night of Sunday. So that should be Sunday the 19th. DBQ will be in the center seat, taking on hosting duties. Tao and I will be flying back up. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Come play the games you like and come here to talk about the games that you love. Until next time, this has been episode number 294 of the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast. I've been your host, Game Logic, from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube. I've been joined by my co-hosts, Towmaster99 and DBQ Hams. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here. Thank you.